Today, we are diving deep into a theological debate that has echoed through the centuries. We're talking about a really sharp historical disagreement between Judaism and Christianity, looking specifically at the literature of that debate, writings where core Christian beliefs were directly and, well, fiercely challenged.
Now, the source material for all of this is what's known as polemical literature, and you can think of it as a kind of intellectual combat fought on paper. Seriously, this isn't some friendly chat over coffee. It's the literature of sharp critical debate, and it's designed to dismantle a specific belief system. And really, this question is right at the heart of what we're talking about today. I mean, what does happen when the very nature of God, the path to salvation, and the meaning of sacred stories are all up for debate? The disagreements become incredibly profound. The stakes, you could say, couldn't be any higher. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the debate over the very definition of God. Then, we're going to examine the critiques of Jesus' life story. After that, we'll get into the different views on salvation. And finally, we'll explore the big why. Why was this literature even written in the first place?
Okay, first up, the debate over God. We're really starting with the most foundational disagreement of all, one that gets right to the heart of the nature of the divine.
This slide just frames the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the Christian doctrine of the Trinity, the idea of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit all being one God. But from the Jewish polemical perspective, this was a huge problem. It was seen as a direct violation of strict monotheism, the belief in one completely indivisible God. These critiques didn't pull any punches, often calling the Trinity illogical or even a form of polytheism.
And that leads right into the next major disagreement, the incarnation. This is the belief that God actually became a human being in the person of Jesus. The critique you find in the polemical literature argue that an infinite, majestic God just couldn't be contained within a finite, physical human body. It was seen as diminishing God's greatness. They called it an offensive anthropomorphism, which is just a fancy way of saying it was assigning human qualities to God in a way that was believed to degrade the divine.
So, from the nature of God, the debate naturally shifts to the story of Jesus himself. And as you're about to see, the critiques of his life story get incredibly pointed.
Right, so this is crucial. Key moments in Jesus' life that are absolutely foundational to Christian faith were directly disputed. The virgin birth was often treated as a myth, just completely scorned. The resurrection, the cornerstone of Christian belief, was dismissed as unbelievable, sometimes even with sharp sarcasm. And even sacred rituals like the Eucharist were disparaged in some of these texts as superstitious or, idolatrous. And this brings us to another fundamental disagreement. How does humanity find salvation? It kind of makes sense, right? If you disagree on the nature of God and the Messiah, you're almost certainly going to disagree on the path to being saved.
This illustrates the divide brilliantly. Christian doctrine has these concepts of original sin, the idea that all humanity inherits sin from the very beginning, and atonement, that Jesus' death was a necessary sacrifice to pay for it all. The Jewish critique in these polemics pushed back hard on this. They argued these ideas were unjust or just plain illogical. Why should one person inherit the sin of another? And why would God require such a sacrifice for forgiveness?
So if you define the problem differently, the solution is going to be different too. For Christianity, the path to salvation is through faith in Jesus. Simple as that. But the Jewish counterargument emphasized a totally different path. Salvation comes through obedience to the Mosaic law and the covenant that was established between God and the Jewish people. We're talking two very different answers to the same ultimate question.
But it's not enough to just know what was said. To really get a handle on this literature, we have to ask why it was written. This wasn't just some academic exercise. It was deeply rooted in the real-world experiences of Jewish communities.
This quote from our source material is just so telling. The tone wasn't always the same. Sometimes it could be a formal, logical argument, but other times it could be really sharp ridicule and mockery. This range tells us so much. It reflects the contentious relationship between the community